All right, we got a video on the trailer here. Mr. Michael, let's see, I'm trying to think of his last name here. Michael, Matthew, Craig, Gregory, Lonnie, Dion Scott is going to do this video for us here. All right, there he is. You ready?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
All right, first thing you're going to check is your approach trailer. You got your amber light. It's proper mount secured by this rubber grommet, and it's not cracked. It has no moisture to cause a short. Next thing you're going to see is you got your little short mud flap here. It's proper mount secured by these 4 bolts. And this bracket, you need to check this bracket, make sure these welds that hold the mud flap on are proper mount secured. The welds are not cracked, bent, or broke, and it is at the proper length. Next thing you're going to see, you have red and white reflective tape running down the whole side of the trailer. You're going to make sure it's proper mount secured and none of it's missing or torn off. Next thing you're going to come to, you're going to come to your landing gear. You have your landing gear leg, you have your landing gear foot. You also have a hinge pin, which the hinge pin holds the landing gear foot on to the landing gear leg. And the landing gear leg is proper mount secured by these bolts to this bracket. You need to check to make sure the bolts are not loose, missing, bent, or broken. You need to make sure the welds on the bracket are not missing. The welds on the bracket are not broke or cracked, and that this is properly greased. Next thing you're going to check is you're going to check your frame. You're going to check to make sure the frame has no illegal welds, drilling, notching, cracking, and it's not bent or broke. Because if this frame is like that, then the trailer will not pass inspection. You also got cross members that run the width of the trailer all the way down. You want to check to make sure that they're not bent, broke, or cracked. And if the welds on those has no illegal drilling, notching, welding, or anything like that. You also want to check to make sure you have air and electrical lines running the width of the trailer, length of the trailer, running down the frame right here and right here. You want to check to make sure that they are not dry rotted, cracked, and are not leaking on the air lines. You want to make sure your electrical lines are not burnt or freighted to cause a short. You also got supports holding the landing gear up to help hold the landing gear. You've got bolts and you've got welds. You need to check to make sure the bolts are not loose, missing, bent, or broken. You need to check to make sure the welds are not bent, broken, or cracked. You also have cross members running the width of the trailer this way. You have cross members on the frame. You also have cross members on the trailer body itself. You want to check to make sure they're not bent, broken, or cracked, and there's no illegal notching, drilling, or welding. You also want to check to make sure. When you come down here before you go on down, you've got your tailgate release. Right now it's in a closed position. If we wanted to open it, we'd flip it open. The tailgate the dogs would release and open it. And if you want to close it back, after you put it back down, you flip it back closed. Moving on down here, we have another mud flap. It's properly mount secured by these bolts and this bracket. Check the bolts so they're not missing, bent, or broke. And check the brackets to make sure they're properly welded. The welds are not cracked, bent, or broke. Right here, right underneath here, if you can see if I can get out of your way here. First thing I see here is you got your adjustable torsion bar. It's properly mounted secured by these bolts. You make sure these bolts have no shiny threads or any loose nut indicating we have a loose nut. You also got these brackets, the leaf spring brackets, and also the torsion bar brackets. You check to make sure that because these are welded, you check to make sure that the welds are not cracked, bent, or broke. You also have a stationary torsion bar over here. This one does not adjust. You also want to make sure that it is properly mounted secured. That this is not loose, bent, broke, or cracked. On down here, you have your leaf springs. You have a leaf spring here, which is a leaf spring bracket there and there. That is properly mounted secure. It's not bent, broke, or cracked. And you also got leaf spring bolts, U-bolts. You want to make sure that they're properly mounted secured, not missing, bent, broke, or cracked. And you also got leaf spring nuts. You want to check to make sure you have no shiny threads or a loose nut to indicate you have a loose nut, because if this comes loose, this ain't going to be fun. Down here, as you can see, we also have our
What you're trying to say is you lose your nut there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Down here you have your brake shoes and your brake drum. You want to check to make sure your shoes have no cracks or no oil on them to indicate that you have a leak somewhere, but also so that the vehicle will stop. Because they get oil on them, they will not stop correctly. And they cannot have no less than a 1/4 inch of material on the shoes, or you will get a ticket from the DOT. You also want to check your inlining of your drums to make sure they're not cracked, have any moisture in any cracks or moisture in the drums, because it will not stop correctly if you do. And then right here in front of me is you have your brake chambers. They're properly mounted secured by 2 nuts back here. And you also have air lines running to the chambers. You want to check to make sure they're not dry rotted or cracked and you hear no air loss. And you also have a brake chamber clamp, which holds the brake chamber in place. You want to make sure it's properly mounted secured.
How many clamps you got on there, 2 or 1?
You've got one here and one here, so you've got one on each brake chamber. You've got a clamp here and a clamp here, and you got a clamp on that one and a clamp on that one. You want to check to make sure they're properly mounted secured, not bent, broke, or cracked. Now, if you want to look back here.
Watch it.
Yeah, tell me about it. Well, actually, if you look up in here, you have 2 air tanks. They're properly mounted secured to these brackets.
Way on up there, ain't
Yeah. You want to check to make sure that these air tanks are properly mounted secured and you hear no air loss. You also have junction boxes here and here. And with air lines running to them, you want to make sure the air lines are not dry rotted or cracked and you hear no air loss. You also got these valves right here on the bottom of the air tanks. That is so you can drain them daily, because if you do not and they build up moisture, they will freeze, bust, and crack, and you will not have no air brakes back here at all.
How many tanks you got up there, Michael?
You got 2. You got one here and one there.
See that, folks? You got one there, all that rust, and one back there. All right, that's good for that part.
Over here,
Now, what are you doing now?
on the other side of this mechanism here, on the axle, the drive axle, you have a push rod on each brake chamber.
I'm gonna go back here to the back, Michael.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go over it, and when you say it, I'm gonna go ahead and so I can film it right here. Now, what are you talking about?
Talking about these push rods right here on the bottom.
You got a push rod.
You've got a push rod.
Rod.
And you've got the clevises right here that attach to the S-cam.
And the clevises. They
You've
go
got-
up here to the slack adjuster.
To the slack adjuster.
This is a slack adjuster. Slack adjuster adjusting rod.
Yep. And then what this does is you got
Goes into the
you got a
S-cam.
carter
Y'all see
key
that?
and 2 pins to hold this on together. So what you want to do is you want to make sure these carter keys are properly mounted secure. They're not missing, bent, broke, or cracked. You want to make sure the pins are properly mounted secure, not missing, bent, broke, or cracked. You want to make sure that the push rod and the nut is not loose, because we had one come loose on this trailer.
Yep, we
And
did,
it's
didn't
not fun. You want to make sure that these are properly tight and properly greased, because these have grease fittings on them. What this does is when you push the brakes, it pushes this rod out, which pushes this out, which turns to this mechanism inside this bar here, which causes the shoes to push out against the drums to stop the vehicle. You have them here, and you also have them back there. You have the same wheel assembly here that you do back there. But first we need to get out, and we're going to run the outside of this wheel assembly.
You're going to tell me how to make sure that the slack adjuster...
Yes, we're going to tell you that the slack adjuster, to make sure that it's in proper adjusting order, is you're going to chalk the vehicle, release the brakes, and you're going to see if you can pull out more than an inch. If you cannot pull out more than an inch on this slack adjuster, it is improperly adjusted. If you pull out more than an inch, it needs to go to the shop. It needs to be adjusted, because you can get a ticket for this. It is unsafe.
Okay.
Now what we're going to do, if I can get out of here.
If Michael can get out of there, he ate too much this morning. I don't know if he's going to be able to move or not.
Oh, I can move. Oh.
What are you going to do, run a wheel assembly?
Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at these wheel assemblies. First, we're going to check the outside of our tire back here to make sure there's no dry rotting cracks or bulges to indicate a slipped radial belt. And we're also going to check the inside of our rims here.
See, he's on the inside, folks. Way on in
We're going to check to make sure the inside of these rims do not have any cracks in the welds, because they will leak and you do not have any air loss. Coming across here, you want to check to make sure you have even tread wear on this tire. And you cannot have no less than 2/32 of tread wear on this tire.
Did you check the inner side wall of the tire? Yeah, I thought I heard you say that.
Yes, check the inner side. Now we're going to check the outside. You check it the same way for no dry rotting, cracks, or bulges to indicate slip radial belt. Also, you're going to check your bud spacing in between these 2 tires. This is what we call bud spacing. We do not have spacers on this trailer. This is a bud spacing wheels. What you want to check is to make sure you have no rocks, limbs, or any kind of debris in here that'll fly off from this trailer and hit some person in their car, because it will be bad. If you look down here, you have a valve stem and a valve stem cap here, and a valve stem and a valve stem cap here. What you do is you make sure you have no air loss on these valve stem and valve stem caps. On test day, you have to test these with air gauge. So what you do is you look on the side wall of your tire, that you just check for any bulges, dry rotting, or cracks, and you find that recommended air pressure, which is right here. It's at 120 psi. So what you do is you take these valve stem caps off, which that won't come off because it's been painted on. So when you take these off, and stick your air gauge to it, check the air pressure. If it's low, you add. If it's high, you subtract. Do not overseed the 120 psi, because it will cause you to have a blowout on the tire. So you check that. You put the valve cap back on, And to make sure you have no air loss, because sometimes when you take those off where they've been stuck on there for so long, they will leak. You make sure that the valve stem and the valve stem core and cap and everything are properly mounted, secured, and you have no air loss. Then you want to check the inside of this rim, which you can't see because I got to stick my hand through here, to make sure that the welds on these rims are not leaking or cracked to indicate you'd have a leaking tire or a reel. Same thing on the outside. You will check to make sure there's no bends, breaks, or cracks in these wheels, and that the welds are not not cracked to indicate you'd have any air loss. Holding this whole wheel assembly on is 10 lug nuts and 10 lug studs. You check to make sure there's no rust indicating you have a loose nut or any shiny threads indicating you have a loose nut. And then you have this hubcap and a hubcap seal. This is held on by these 6 bolts. You check to make sure there's no oil residue down here, because you know if there is, the seal is bad, you need to get it replaced. If there's no oil residue down here, you know the seal is properly secured and is not dry rotted, cracked, or leaking, and is doing its job. Because in behind here is bearing oil. And to check that, you'd pop this cap off, stick your finger down in there until you got the oil, or you'd look at the fill mark, and you'd be able to see it. Because that bearing oil is very important, because if you run the bearing oil out, or run it where it leaks and you keep driving, you're going to heat up this bearing and then you're going to cause all kinds of damage. I have 3 other wheel assemblies just like this. I like to omit those. You tell your instructor I like to omit those. She may say yes, she may say no. She might make you run all 3.
Oh, you mean you just have to say the same thing you just got through saying?
Yes.
Oh.
Or she might let you omit them and you won't have to.
Okay. Well, this I'll be the instructor, and I'll say, go ahead and omit the suspension components and the wheel assemblies on both sides.
All right. Now we also have a red marker light right here. It's properly mounted secured by this rubber grommet. It is not dry rotted, cracked, and there's no cracks in the lens to indicate moisture can get in there and get it cause a short. You also have your ABS light, which is properly mounted secured by these screws to the side of the trailer, and there's no dry rotting or cracks in the rubber gasket beside it, and there's no cracks in the light to indicate a short, because if moisture gets in there, it's going to short it out and it will not work. Moving back here, we have our other mud flap. It's properly mounted secured by these bolts. And this bracket, you check the bolts in the brackets to make sure the bolts are not missing or loose, and you check the welds on the bracket to make sure that they are not cracked, bent, or broke. You also have your trailer skirt apron right here. It's properly secured by these bolts. As you can see, there's bolts all the way down through here. And what you do is you check to make sure the bolts are not missing, loose, or cracked. And there also is welds on this. You check to make sure these welds are not cracked, bent, or broke. You also have your tailgate. And red and white reflective tape running down the side of the tailgate, behind the tailgate. You check to make sure it is there and it's not missing, bent, broke, or cracked. On the tailgate, you make sure it's in the fully closed position. Because if not, if this is not in the fully closed position by the dogs, which are right here, is properly mounted secured by these 2 bolts, and they're not bent, broke, or cracked. Because if you don't, when you're loaded, all this stuff that's in here will fall out and hit a car behind you, and then you'll have to pay for it, or it could be really bad. You can cause somebody to have a wreck or an accident. You always got to make sure this is in the fully closed position. And if you step back here, if you look underneath the trailer, you have your 2-way, full-way running flashers that are properly mounted secured by those rubber grommets, and that they are they're properly mounted secured by those rubber grommets, and there's no cracks to indicate a short. Because if there's a crack, the moisture will get in there and it'll cause the short, and they won't work. If you come over here, you have your other mud flap. It's properly mounted secured by these 4 bolts in this bracket. Same thing. You check to make sure there's no bolts missing or loose. And on the brackets, you check to make sure that the welds are not cracked, bent, or broke. You move on down here, you have another red amber light. It's properly mounted secured by this rubber grommet, and there's no cracks to indicate any moisture to cause a short. You also have white and red reflective tape running down the whole side of this trailer. You make sure it is on there properly mounted secured and it's not missing. If you look right here, a lot of people don't do this. If you look at this sticker, it says do not weld, drill, or heat beam on this frame. So, like I said, you check to make sure there's no notches, cracks, bends, or breaks, and you do not have no illegal welds, drills, or anything on this frame, on the trailer frame or the trailer box. Right here, this is where our spare tire would go. It is properly mounted secured by these bolts to this bracket, and the bracket is welded to the frame, so you check the welds to make sure they're not bent, broke, or cracked, or missing. And on the bolts, you make sure that you check to make sure they're not bent, broke, or cracked, or missing, or loose, because this will come off and hit somebody and hurt somebody. This is where our spare tire would go, because this is our spare tire holder if we have one on the trailer. This is the main operation of the landing gear. This is the landing gear gearbox, which is properly mounted, secured, and is properly greased. And also you have your other bolts that hold it on to the frame of the trailer. You check to make sure these bolts are not loose, missing, bent, or broke, or cracked, and you check these welds to make sure they're not bent, broke, or cracked, or the welds are not coming loose. And you also have your landing gear leg, your landing gear foot, and your hinge pin, which holds the landing gear foot on in place for safety. You also have your stabilizer bars, which is properly secured here and here by bolts and welds. If you look, there's welds here and there's welds on these brackets. So you check to make sure the weld's not cracked or broke, to make sure that it properly works right. And to operate this landing gear, you would take the handle, the landing gear bar out, slide it into place. You turn it clockwise to lower it. You turn it counterclockwise to raise it. And then after you raise it, it would go to the complete stop. This is right there. You pull it out, stick it back in its locking place. And then if you come up here, you have another mud flap that is properly secured by these bolts in this bracket, and it's to the proper length. And you have, the last but not least, you have another amber light. It's properly secured by this rubber grommet, and it's not cracked to cause any moisture in this short and to cause a short. And after you run the trailer like that, you look at your instruction, you say, now I would like a minute to review. So what you do is you go back over your trailer and just think, okay, I went over that. I said there, electrical lines run the width of the trailer. I said the frame, the cross members. Just think of in your head or out loud what all you've told her. You said the reflective tape, the mirrors, the mud flaps, the lights.
Did you say 3 marker lights in the middle? Excuse me, Michael, I don't know if you got them or not, did you?
Yes, I said
you did say? I must have not been listening.
Yes, I said the 3 marker lights underneath the trailer right here. You can see that are properly mounted, secured by these rubber grommets, and they are not dry rot or cracked. Well, if you didn't, we'll say it. It's always good to repeat yourself, because if you don't and you think of something, well, did I say it or not? If you say it again, it's not going to hurt you to say it even on the second time.
Mm-hmm.
If you just keep going over, you do the wheel assemblies, the tape, the lights, the landing gear. Come on back here where you started, mud flap, the lights. And then what you do after you did all that, you look at your instructor and say, I'm good with that.